Tonight's My Journey webinar, College Admissions from A to Z, Ace Your Application Process, and Stay Stress-Free. My name is Nicole Wolf, and I'm your host for this premiere event in our My Journey series for the season. I am so happy to have you here, and on behalf of everyone at ACT, thank you so much for joining us. I am beyond excited to be joined by our incredible expert speakers tonight from Collegewise. And I know you can see them on screen with me, but before I turn things over to them, I want to cover some essentials with you to help enhance your viewing experience throughout the webinar. First, you're going to see several widgets and tools on your screen. You are in complete control of these. They're resizable and movable, so you're welcome to move them around to get the most out of your screen space. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can submit them through the Q&A engagement tool. We're going to do our best to answer them throughout the webinar, and we'll have some special time for Q&A at the end of our presentation as well. A copy of the slides is available in your resources widget box, as well as some other handy items to accompany this presentation and for you to reference long after it's over. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be sent out via email to the email address you registered with within 1 to 2 weeks. For your best viewing experience, we encourage using a high-speed and stable internet connection, and be sure to close any programs or browser sessions running in the background that could cause issues. So that means asking anyone in the house to either pause that Twitch stream or the latest episode of the favorite series that they're binging. Webinars are very bandwidth intensive, so anything to conserve that bandwidth will absolutely help. If you find everything still lagging or the sound stops working, try refreshing your browser, and that can also be a Control F5 on your keyboard. If you are struggling with anything throughout the webinar, check out the help tool at the bottom of your screen. And finally, if you need a refresher on any of these helpful tips, there's a super helpful webinar viewing tips and reminders slide on your screen right below the media player if you have me in the center of your console. So be sure to refer back to those at any point if you need help. Okay, I'm ready. I hope you are too. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our friends at Collegewise so they can tell you a bit about themselves and jump into your exclusive invites into the admissions journey.
Thanks so much, Nicole. We've been really excited about this. I do feel the need to point out that there's cause for celebration already because I remembered to unmute myself before I started talking. So I'm considering that a college admissions presentation victory. Before we dive into our introductions, it's really helpful for us as presenters to learn a little bit more about the audience to whom we're speaking. So I'm putting up a quick participating and just telling us which of these groups you are hailing from. There's a submit button at the bottom of the screen. You might need to scroll to see it. But this is just helpful for us. I'm going to leave it up here for about another 15 seconds. It helps us select which questions we might want to answer, and we can make adjustments on the fly depending on what our representation looks like. So let me give you another couple seconds to finish here, and then we'll go and see what the results look like so far. It's like getting immediate scores back on an exam here. All right, final chance to submit yourself for the poll. Let's see, and don't forget to scroll down and hit submit. You actually have to hit that button. So let's see who we've got so far. Yeah, this is representative of, see so many parents and students and counselors and educators here. That's fantastic. We've got one more question for you. Same drill with this poll here. And if you're a counselor or educator who says, well, I actually am working with a number of these populations here, maybe select the population you think is most representative of who you're working with, maybe your largest group. Yep, these here as we're waiting. Don't forget to scroll down and hit submit. After this, I promise you won't have more homework to do until the end of this presentation when we have another poll for you. But after this, we'll get right to our presentation. All right, another 10 seconds or so. This is good. We've got almost 70% of people having completed this. Let's see what the results look like. Yep, and that makes sense to us, that usually the closer people get to, or students in particular, get to applying to college. So if you're in the class of 2024, you are sort of coming up next. It's your turn now. That they tend to be the people who populate these webinars and presentations for us. You submitting this. And now let's get to our introductions, and we're going to do our best to keep these mercifully brief. We could get good college admissions information and advice, but we do feel like we should tell you who we are, so you know who the heck are these people that are purporting to be experts and tell me how to get into college. So my fellow presenters and I are from Collegewise, and we are a college admissions counseling company. We believe in the transformative power of higher education, and we exist to help as many students as possible access that opportunity. We also see that in many student and parent communities, the process of applying and getting accepted to college has gotten too confusing, too complex, and too intimidating for many families. In fact, in some communities, the process has entirely spun out of control. And between what people say to each other and what they hear from their friends or their neighbors and or other students and what they read in the press, it's almost like people feel, many students are feeling like, if I don't do everything perfectly, I won't be able to go to college at all. I've got to take all the hardest classes, and I've got to have perfect grades, and I've got to get great test scores, and I've got to do leadership, and I've got to do community service, and I have to get a black belt in karate, and I need to have a certificate proclaiming that I invented the proton. And if I don't do these things, then I'm going to end up not going to college and living in my parents' basement forever. Now, of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but that's what the messaging sounds like in a lot of communities. And we think that that perception is not accurate. And so part of our job is to help change that. And the reason and the ways that we do this, we have a staff of over 70 college counselors here who are college admissions experts. We get roughly 2,000 applications for every one spot as a college counselor here. And that means that we can be really selective about who we recruit. So we hire people who believe what we believe and want to help as many students as possible find their way to college. We hire counselors who have worked as admissions officers, actually reading and evaluating and making decisions for colleges. We hire people who have worked as school counselors. We hire people who have worked for community-based organizations who part of their mission was to help students find their way to college. And once they get here, we train them on all the facets of the college admissions process and of the Collegewise way of guiding students through those parts. And the nice part about the wonders of technology is that while this staff of 70 counselors is spread out all over the country, we're actually able to give them a platform so that they can consistently learn and share from each other. So, you know, if we have a counselor who's has a particular expertise, maybe they know a lot about applying to military academies because they've worked with a lot of students who have done that. Well, then we can set up a webinar for them, for our own people, to train them. Our staff spends a lot of time on our company intranet, the Slack that we use during the day, putting up questions for their colleagues like, hey, I've got a student who's interested in an honors program at this particular college. Does anybody have experience helping kids apply here? I'd like to get a sense of what sort of qualifications they need. And inevitably, within 2 minutes, they've got an answer from somebody who says, I've helped a lot of kids do that. You want to jump on the phone and talk about it just a little bit? And so that platform gives us a chance to create this generous cycle where we're consistently learning and sharing with each other. And so with this group, we really have 3 jobs. First, families can hire us to help advise their student through the college admissions process. Sometimes a family might come to us and say, hey, I've got a senior who just needs a little help. Maybe they're trying to figure out what to write for their college essay. We'll be talking a little bit about that in this webinar. Maybe they just want someone to review their application that they've already completed, or maybe they want someone to project manage the whole process for them. Some people will show up actually in their as early as their freshman year, but most of the students who come to us arrive during the junior and or the senior year and are looking for some sort of guidance to help them through that. So that's our first job. Our second job is that we partner with schools and with districts to help supplement or complement their college counseling offerings for their student communities. So we've just finished offering a number of different boot camps, we call them, which is an intensive experience over a couple days where we help a group of seniors complete their applications and their essays for college. And there are several school districts who contracted with us to come in and deliver those. We really enjoy partnering with schools because it lets us sort of get in and see, well, what sort of help do you feel like your students need? How can we best help supplement the resources and the work that you're already doing? And then finally, and we really love this part of the job, we are here to share as much true, good, accurate, helpful information about getting into college as possible. So schools will invite us sometimes to come and speak at their junior parent night, or a PTA may invite us to come speak to their constituents, or a community-based organization may have us come there. And now we love, Zoom is so popular. We are doing Zoom webinars all the time to the general public to share as much information as we can. And oftentimes when we do these, and we'll probably see this here tonight, we've got students there, we've got parents, we've got school counselors, teachers, administrators, even our competitors. We are happy to share that information with as many people as possible, because our mission is to help as many kids find their way to the right college for them as possible. Even if that means arming our competitors with good information, it's worth it to help their students get access to what they need to get where they're trying to go. And so those are our most important jobs at Collegewise. And we know that we've done a good job when we feel like after an interaction with us, whether it's a meeting with one of our counselors that a student has, or an application workshop we run at a school, or even a webinar like this one, which we're so excited to be doing with ACT, we know we've done a good job if we can send people away from that interaction feeling better informed and just more positive than they were when they arrived. So I would like to just take a second to thank ACT for trusting us enough to join you and to present this webinar. We've been really excited about it. And anytime we get a speaking engagement any place, we have two jobs. The first is send the audience away feeling like I just told you. And second, we want to do the kind of job that makes the people who invited us say, we want to have you back again. So we're trying to do those two things tonight, and I think we're going to do both of them. And I hope that you will be feeling that sense of positivity and sort of arming yourself with good information by the end of this, so that you can take some more control of your college planning. I'll do some quick introduction of myself here, and then let my colleagues introduce themselves, and then we'll dive in. I've already told you a lot about Collegewise. Well, I'm the guy who founded the place. We've been around. We just celebrated our 24th birthday on August 16th. But in 1999, I founded a little business all by myself where I just drove to kids' houses and we sat at their kitchen tables and I helped them complete their college applications. And so here we are 24 years later. Collegewise has worked with nearly 30,000 students, and we get to have access to these wonderful opportunities like this. I'm going to allow presenters to introduce themselves. They will do a much better job of that than I will. So Brenna, you are teed up. It's all you now.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. Hi, everyone. My name is Brenna Heintz. I am a college counselor here at Collegewise. I started my own educational journey many years ago. I attended Tufts University for my undergrad and the University of Pennsylvania for my master's. Before coming to Collegewise, which I did about 2 years ago, my entire career was in undergraduate admissions. So Kevin talked about how a lot of us counselors are actually former admissions officers. That is me. I spent about half of my time as an admissions officer at MIT, and then the other half at Swarthmore, which is a small private liberal arts college right outside of Philly. I love supporting students through the process. I love thinking about admissions. When I will talk to you tonight, I will definitely speak from both my perspective as a counselor, but also as an admissions officer, and give you insight on what we really looked at when we were reading those thousands and thousands of applications we read every year. So really excited to chat with you and share my insight. We have one more amazing colleague from Collegewise with us, Christopher. I am going to let them introduce themselves.
Everyone, I'm Christopher. I'm also a Collegewise counselor here. I'm typically based in Los Angeles, but I am currently working from New York because I'm here to meet with a couple of students. I began my educational journey around the same time as Brenna, so I do lament that she's a long time ago. I began at university, and I also studied for a bit in Korea at both Seoul National University and Logan University. I have begun authoring some of the white papers that Collegewise is producing. So these are academic research papers about the trends in admissions, and you'll hear a little bit more from me about that later. Just so you know, I'm the one fielding the question, Q&A. That's where you're getting a lot of those answers from. And I currently work with the caseload of students all over the world. And I'm going to go back to Kevin for now.
Thanks, Christopher. Well, here's where we get to the presentation. And so we like to begin every presentation by addressing the reality of college admissions, because in many communities, the reality of college admissions in the United States is actually much brighter than what they hear. You might be identifying with some of these messages that you see up on the screen today. This tends to be, in many communities, what students talk about with each other, what parents talk about. It's certainly what the press writes about. It's not, an enticing headline for a major newspaper or major news outlet to write about how many great colleges there are who are happy to admit the majority of the students who apply. It's a much better headline to talk about how hard it is to get in and how the schools that are the hardest to get into got even more difficult to get in this year. But the reality is that there are over 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States. Roughly 2,500 of them are the traditional four-year colleges and universities that you've heard of. And of these schools, they accept, on average, roughly 2/3 of their applicants. And so that's very good news. That means that the majority of applicants who decide to apply to college in the United States, and you will learn tonight, it's not just straight A students. At Collegewise, we work with A students, we work with C students, we work with everyone in between. There is a college out there, likely one who will trip over themselves to admit you if you do the work to prepare and to find it. And so we like to start with that reality. We're not telling students, don't aim high if you define for yourself that your high goal is that you would like to go to one of those very selective universities. But we certainly do not believe that you need to attend one of those universities to have a happy and successful life as an adult. In fact, and we've got two of our three presenters here. I am not one of them, but two of our three attended these kinds of highly selective schools. And they would tell you they had wonderful experiences and would probably do it all over again. But they would also tell you that what they got out of college was a result of what they put into it while they were there. And that's why we always tell students what you do in college is much, much more important than the relative prestige of the college where you do it. And so here's a graphic just to show you what these acceptance rates look like. We like to make this visual so that students can see, gosh, I hear all this terrible news about how hard it is to get into college. Unfortunately, what that makes a lot of students do is say to themselves, well, I'm just a B student, or I get B's and C's, so college probably isn't going to be an option for me. And that's just not accurate. You want to make informed decisions as you're doing your college planning. And so whether you're an A student, a C student, or somewhere in between, the answer to the question, can you go to college, is almost certainly yes. The remaining question is, which one will it be? And we're here to help you start that process and make good decisions as you start down that path. So let's see. This is a nice summary of all of these. I did want to throw out that in number 3, 72% of all undergraduate students received some type of financial aid in 2019 and 20. There are billions of dollars of financial aid available to help students pay for college. And we are actually offering with ACT a financial aid and scholarships webinar on October 17th. You'll have the opportunity at the end of this webinar to fill out another poll, and we'll invite you to raise your hand and say, hey, I would like to know when you do the next one of these. But if you're concerned about paying for college, as lots of people are, just know for sure that you are not the only one. The majority of people who are going to college look at those price tags and say, I don't just have access to that to write out a check, for painlessly for the next 4 years. And that's why there is so much financial aid available if you get the information and avail yourself of that opportunity. And so as we start our college admissions advice for tonight, I do want to say that many students might decide and make an informed choice that college isn't for you. There are many paths to becoming a happy and successful adult, and not all of them require that you go to college. So you might decide that you want to go straight into working after you graduate from high school, or maybe you want to do that for a couple years and save some money before you go to college, or maybe you decide that you want to join the military, or you want to join the local fire department, or maybe you want to go to a community college for 2 years and get an associate's degree. All of those might be completely viable choices for you and may be the right choice for you. But here's the thing about college planning. If you want to give yourself the option of attending college in the fall after your senior year, there is a very narrow window of time that you have to prepare to do that and to complete and submit those applications. Most of those applications are due by January 1st of your senior year. There are different schools that have different deadlines, but most of them and most of our seniors are working on their college applications during the fall of their senior year. So that means if you decide in April of your senior year, 2 months before graduation, you know what, I think I want to apply to college. Well, we said there are 4,000 colleges available. Those 4,000 colleges, most of them aren't available anymore. There might be 50 left that you could still apply to. Still potentially good choices. But so what I want to encourage you to think about today is even if you're unsure whether or not college is right for you, you could decide to engage in your college planning, to find and apply to colleges that are right for you. And maybe you decide after you see where you get in and what your financial aid options are, and after you talk to your parents, you might decide later in your senior year that you're not going to take that option and you're going to do one of these other ones. But we think that optionality is a great thing for anyone, especially when you're a student. It makes you feel, and parents who are supporting them, like you have some control over your future destiny. So I want to encourage you to embrace that opportunity. If you're in high school, this is the time to do this right now. And our 2 tips to get us going are, please don't assume that you aren't eligible. Please remember that roughly 75% of people who apply to college get into at least one college. So those options are available to you. And if you're just getting started and you're not really sure, and we're going to cover a lot of it tonight, but you're not really sure, what do colleges even want from me? With 4,000 schools, where are you supposed to start? Well, a good place to start is that every state in the country has public universities that are part of that state. The difference between a public university and a private one, public universities are funded by their state governments. Many of them even have charters with their state that mandate they have to take a certain number of students, a majority, from that home state before they admit anyone from outside of that state. And what might be even more enticing, many of those colleges and universities also offer much cheaper tuitions to people that are in their home state. So you may decide that one of those schools is not right for you, but if you begin by investigating the public universities in your state and you look at what they are asking you for and what are their qualifications, those are almost always a good proxy for admissions qualifications for many other schools. It doesn't mean if you satisfy them for that one school, you'll get in every place, but it's very rare that you would satisfy the requirements for a public university in your state and then find that you're just not eligible for any other colleges except that one. Admissions doesn't work like that. So this is a really good place to start. And here is where we start to get to what I think will be the best part of the presentation, when I get to turn it over to my colleague, Brenna, to start walking you through what do admissions officers who are sitting on the other side of that desk reading applications, what do they look for? How do they evaluate these? How do they evaluate these different criteria? How do they weight each one? And Brenna is one of our many counselors, as she said, who did this job as an admissions officer. So Brenna, I'm going to invite you to take them inside your admissions brain and share all the good information and advice that you have for them here.
Thanks, Kevin. Yes, I love to talk about this because I spent so many years reading thousands and thousands of applications and talking to students who would hear us speak and say, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known this before I applied, because there is a lot of information out there. And our goal tonight is not, especially for you seniors or parents or folks who are working with seniors, to stress you out, because I know this process is very close to you, right? But it's helping to give you some framing for, here are things that you should be thinking about throughout high school Or if you're starting to prepare your application, here are things that I can keep in mind and know why colleges are asking you the questions they're asking you. So academics is the first and most important thing in this process because duh, you're going to college, right? In college, you have to take classes. You're going to probably get grades. So of course, your academics in high school are the most important thing when college admissions officers are evaluating you. Now, fundamentally, the process of evaluating academics is not about us asking who's the best here, right? Who has the highest GPA out of anyone in our applicant pool? That's not what we're about. The question surrounding academics from the admissions perspective is this one simple question: can you do the work? If we admit you to our institution, can you come here and thrive, right? Colleges are not in the business of admitting students who are going to struggle or drop out of their college. That's not good for you. That's not good for them. And so with academic evaluation, that's the fundamental question that they're asking themselves. Are you going to be able to succeed? And the most predictive thing in this process that will help them answer that question is your transcript. So what we look at when we're evaluating academics, first is course selection. So what courses are you taking? Now, the really important thing for you to understand here is this is all done in context. So we ask ourselves on the admission side, what opportunities are available for them in terms of the courses that they have at their high school? And of those, what are they choosing to take advantage of? So this is not a situation where we say, oh, this curriculum is better than this one. It's all about what you have and what you're choosing to take. So my best advice for people sitting here is take challenging classes in things that interest you, right? This is not about you have to take the most challenging courses in every single subject offered. But if you are someone who maybe thinks, hey, I might want to be an engineer or do some hardcore STEM stuff in college, it's a very good idea to take the more challenging classes in math and science. If you want to be an engineer, calculus and physics are absolutely musts. And so if you have those at advanced levels, pursue them if you can at your high school. Now, grades are another big part of this. A very, very common question we get is, is it better to get a B in a more advanced course or an A in a slightly easier course? And any annoying former admissions officer like myself is going to tell you, well, it's best to get the A in the more challenging course. But the reality is we want to see you push rigor where it makes sense, but we also want to see you succeed. Because in college, you're going to need to have that balance. And so when you're a high school student making decisions for yourself about, hey, I know I can handle this many advanced classes, but another few need to be regular level that will allow me to succeed, to get sleep, to have balance in my life. That's important. That's a skill that we actually value in college. So do your best with your grades. The other big thing to know about grades is that grade trends matter. So sometimes maybe you started high school around COVID, particularly you seniors, and it was a rough start. This happens. So maybe your grades were a little shaky, and then each year you got better and better. So you have this upward grade trend. Colleges really respond to that. The last full year of coursework that they're going to have to evaluate you is your junior year. So that's an important year, but it's not something where you should count yourself out if you've had a few shaky grades along the way. The other thing about trends is that we also look for trends in your curriculum and how you're doing in those classes. So maybe you're someone who says on your application, hey, I really want to be an English major, but then you're not taking your most challenging English classes offered. And maybe English classes are your lowest grades. That's going to be a little confusing for admissions officers. So think about trends and think about the transcript as a whole. It's not just 1 year in isolation. It's not just one C that's going to ruin your chance of getting into college. People get C's and go to college, right? But it's all part of this larger picture. And then the last tip in terms of coursework is maybe you're sitting here being like, hey, maybe I would want to be an engineer, but we don't have engineering classes at my high school, or we don't have a really high level calculus class, but I am ready to take calculus. You can and should be empowered to look elsewhere for courses to supplement. Community colleges are great resources, online courses, even free online open courses. Colleges value that. So we want you to seek out opportunity to get the rigor you need, to get the balance you need, but no, it's just one part of your academic evaluation. Now, the other part of academic evaluation is sometimes standardized testing. Now, we all know that the landscape around standardized testing is varied depending on the colleges. So colleges all have different requirements. Some colleges require you to take standardized tests and submit those scores. Some colleges, that's optional for them. You can if you want to, if you think it's going to help your app, but you also don't have to. And then there are a few colleges out there that will not consider standardized testing. So my big piece of advice with this, when there are lots of things happening and those things change from year to year, is to just be very knowledgeable about the landscape going in. Research the testing policies of the colleges or universities that you're interested in as soon as you think you might be interested in that school, because that can help guide your test prep strategy. Honestly, my best piece of advice for everyone is, if you have the time, prep for standardized testing. Take a standardized test so you have that test score in your back pocket, because there are some schools out there that maybe were test optional but are bringing back their testing requirements. And then later on in the game, so for those of you seniors, maybe you've already taken your test and you have a list of schools you're applying to. You can look at the policies for each school and you can decide, okay, my tests I think are reflective of my academic ability. It looks like, given the school's average testing profile, which you can just Google or look up on their website, I think my tests will help me here. So I'm going to submit them to that school. This is something we work with our students on definitely a case-by-case basis. This is another time when talking to a trusted adult is really helpful as you navigate this. But high level, prepare for the test if you can, have a score, and then do your research, because this is just another way that admissions officers can help answer that question of, can the student do the work if I admit them to my institution? That's what it's about. It's not a make or break thing. It's just one part of that question. So that's the first and biggest part of your academic or your application evaluation. But some other schools have a lot more to this process. So Kevin's going to tell you a little bit more about that.
Kevin, I think you're still on mute.
No, I jinxed myself when I celebrated unmuting earlier. I never should have done that. That is exactly it was bound to happen. So now I'm back and live. There are many colleges and universities that will stop their evaluation here with what Brenna has shared. It's hard to summarize what types of schools they are, but many of them, you could say one of these two things is true. They either get far too many applications for them to spend significant time evaluating more than transcripts and test scores, or they might be one of those schools that falls into, remember the graphic I showed you? They fall into one of those larger slices of the pie. So if it's a school that says, we're going to admit 70% of our applicants, and that means that we can be fairly quick with our evaluation. So if you're wondering, if you have schools that you're interested in, or if you start to research colleges and you're wondering, is this one of those schools that stops the evaluation here? Simple way to do that is any college that might interest you, go to their website, find the undergraduate admissions section. And if all they ask for applicants, almost every one of those website sections will say application requirements. They're very clear about it. They don't hide that from students. And if one of those schools tells you, we need your biographical information, your transcript, and test scores, that's all we need, it means these are one of those schools. But many colleges will go that we call, sorry, I skipped a page here, holistic admissions. Holistic admissions means that these admissions officers are going to take the time, and the college has constructed a process and a team that can take time to do this, that wants to look beyond just the transcript and test scores. It doesn't mean that those things become less important, but it means they want to recognize you're not just going to be a robotic student who comes here and learns and takes tests and gets grades. You're going to be a member of a campus community. And we want to know, well, what type of person are you? What are your interests? What is your character like? What do your teachers think about you? Who is the person that we are getting when coming to this campus? For many, if not most students, that can be very good news, because I don't know that I've ever met a teenager who says, I am 100% encapsulated by my transcript and my test scores. Once you know that about me, you don't need to know anything else. We're all complex human beings. Nobody is more wonderfully and interestingly complex than teenagers. And so these colleges are saying, we want to use some of these other elements so we can get to know the person behind the transcript and the test scores. And so Brenna's going to take you through a few of those elements now, starting with activity.
Yeah, community is so important in this process for a lot of colleges, particularly smaller colleges where your classes might have 10, 15, 25 students. You're going to be someone who shows up and not just be a walking, talking transcript, right? You're a human being who's going to engage in their community. And so one way as admissions officers that we really look to see who is going to be a good community member is through your activities. Now, I feel this acutely because the seniors I'm working with are working on putting together their activities list, and they're really nervous. They're kind of freaking out. And they come at this process thinking that it needs to be a fancy, impressive resume. My job is to impress admissions officers. And I'm here to tell you first and foremost that that is not your job. When colleges ask you for an activities list, what they're actually asking you is, how do you spend your time? Outside of eating, sleeping, and schoolwork, right? You better be doing all those things. No matter who you are, please do those things. What else do you choose to do with your limited time as a high school student? And so the word activities, I want you to think about it very broadly. So of course, activities can be things like we might traditionally think of, stuff that would show up on a resume. So awards that you've won through competitions, student clubs, organizations, right? Debate, newspaper, Model UN, jobs, internships, research opportunities, athletics, music, right? All of these are activities, but there are lots of things that students don't traditionally think of that count in terms of admissions. So if you do work to help support your family, right? I have a lot of students who don't think that their jobs are something that they should put on their application. That is a big way you spend your time. 100% put that on your app. If you have other family responsibilities, I've worked with plenty of students who have some form of caretaking responsibilities. Maybe they have an older relative living with them. Maybe their parents work late. I worked with a student a few years ago whose parents both worked late, and they were responsible for picking up their little brother after school, hanging out with him, helping him do his homework. That's a big part of your life. That's how you spend your time. You should absolutely feel empowered to put that on your college application. What we're trying to get here is not necessarily just the what. I am curious about the what. I want to know how you spend your time as an admissions officer, but I'm not expecting that you're going to do those exact same things in college, right? I don't expect every person who is editor-in-chief of their high school newspaper to come and be editor-in-chief at my college or university. But what that tells me about the student is more important. So what we're trying to get at is some deeper qualities about what does this activity tell us about who you are as a person and what type of person you might be on our campus. So this is a little snapshot of what part of the activity section looks like on the Common Application, which is a pretty common application platform. And you'll see that it doesn't give you a lot of room to explain, right? So this is not a situation where you're telling us everything about everything you've ever done. It's saying, hey, I want you to take a few activities that have been really important to you over your high school career and give me an idea of what it is, what you do in it, and what sort of impact you've made. And impact is an important word because I do care that you show up and you bring yourself to whatever you do, right? That you're someone who people are excited to have come to the club meeting, show up to practice. But that doesn't mean you need to have a fancy, impressive title for every activity, right? Colleges do like leadership, but there are lots of different forms of leadership, right? Student body president, that's obvious leadership. You stand up in front of crowds. You love to talk in front of a lot of people. Kevin and I are totally, obviously, those type of people. But can you imagine if a campus was full of just me and Kevin talking all the time? That wouldn't be a great campus community. You need quieter folks. You need people who glue groups together, who quietly get things done, who rally the rest of the people, who come up with creative ideas. And so demonstrating impact and leadership can be done in a lot of ways and in a lot of different spaces. So we care about you showing up to things that matter. Quality over quantity here is truly, truly, truly important. I want my students to find things that they are excited to show up for. for, right? Not feel like they need to tack on a million different activities to make their list as long as possible. And one important way or time where students are kind of thinking about activities is during school breaks. So this is something that a lot of my students at Collegewise come to me and they're like, okay, I have the summer. What do I need to do to look good for colleges? And the first thing I say is like, let's stop there. Let's reframe the purpose of a school break, right? A break should be a break, right? We want you to have balance. We want you to relax. That will make you more productive during the school year and it will make you a happier person. But the really special thing about summer and any break from school is that you just have space to engage in things that you otherwise wouldn't during the school year. So this can manifest in lots of different ways. I think summer is a great time for students to get a job, right? For students to volunteer with a community organization that they can't during the school year because they can only do it during business hours. But it's also a great time to explore. I had a student last year, well, no, he's a senior now. So last summer we were talking about this and he is on the robotics team. He's very artsy and he's like, I don't really know what I want to do. I like STEM, maybe engineering. And his friend told him about an architecture program that he had gone to the summer prior. And this student knew nothing about architecture, but he's like, oh, I guess maybe I could try it out. I kind of like STEM stuff. I kind of like art. And he went to this architecture program last summer, truly changed his life. He's like, Brenna, I have finally found the thing that combines these two interests that I have. Maybe this is a career I want to go into. And so this is the sort of thing that if you have the opportunity to explore something academic that you haven't otherwise been able to, that's a great time. But don't go at summer or school breaks trying to do something that you think will impress admissions officers. When we say don't pay to play, that means that there are some programs out there that are very, very expensive and maybe held at a university that has a very fancy, prestigious name. Don't do that program just because you think the name is impressive. That's not going to impress admissions officers. That program might be great for you if it allows you to explore something new, like this architecture program. That would be a great example. But this is not about impressing your admissions officers. It's about doing things that fill you up, give you opportunity to learn new things and try new things. And really, that will translate to an admissions officer, no matter what it is. Learning what you don't love while you're a high school student is just as valuable as learning what you do love. So don't put the pressure on yourself to find your one true passion now, but use it to deep dive and try new things. So activities, a big part of this process and telling your story. The other really big part of telling your story is actually you telling it through admissions essays. So Kevin is an essay king. I'm going to let him talk all about how to approach the essays.
Yeah, we love the essays at Collegewise, and you'll see in just a second that the reason we enjoy them so much is it's one of the best vehicles to help the admissions officers get to know the student behind all those qualifications. So when we say college essays, let me just give you a few examples. So here's an example of what many colleges might call the personal statement. It might be worded differently depending on where you apply, but that's one. And usually they'll give you a word limit, usually somewhere between, for a longer essay like this, somewhere between 500 and 600 words. There are about 1,000 colleges in the country that are on something called the Common Application, which means you can fill out this one application and submit it to any one of those schools. They give you a choice of essay topics there. And then many of the schools that accept the Common Application have what they call supplemental essay questions, which means they're saying, you can fill out the Common Application and submit it to us with whichever one of their essay topics you choose. But we've also got our own essay topic we would like you to complete in addition to that. So here are a few of those. We just picked a couple colleges so you can see some examples. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly here. And we find that the essays with the students we work with at Collegewise are often something that they struggle with, even for students who consider themselves and have shown to be good writers, even for students that are doing well in their English classes or might even be taking AP English. They will struggle with this because what happens is you're doing a very different project with the college essay than you are with an academic essay. The reason that colleges ask students to write essays is they are trying to get to know more about this application applicant and who you are. One of our Collegewise colleagues who worked at several highly selective colleges as an admissions officer put it this way. He said, when I would read the application, not the essay, but the part with all the qualifications, I would be asking myself, can this student be successful here? Have they demonstrated, as Brenna explained, that they could come here and make positive contributions to our campus? But when I would read the essays, I'd be asking myself, would I want this kid to be my roommate if I were back in college? So it's about helping people see why you are likable, not popular, but likable. And everyone is likable, just about everyone, when you do this one thing. And it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. When you just be yourself. And so the most important thing you can do when answering a college essay prompt is to think to yourself, well, what is my honest answer to this prompt? What's the truth? What would I actually say to someone else? And Brenna has lived this as an admissions officer, but so many students sit down to write their college essays and they think, what's going to sound good? What does the admissions office want to hear? And that's why they end up reading so many college essays on the admissions side that say something akin to, playing on the high school football team taught me the importance of hard work and commitment. There is nothing wrong with writing a college essay about football if it's something you've committed to and it mattered to you. That's exactly the kind of thing they would love to know more about. But do you think a football player anywhere in the United States, an athlete anywhere in the United States, has ever stood up in front of their teammates at the end of the season and said, as I reflect on our season, I personally feel that I have gained valuable insight and important lessons that will help me be successful in college? No one would actually say that to their peers. So why did it really matter to you? Football is difficult. You had to do double days during the summer. You had to commit to it and go to practice and do these games, even with all your other commitments. Why were you involved in this for so long? What did you get out of it? And if you feel like, well, it's something I really enjoy, but I don't really have much more to say about it other than that, then you want to pick something else where you do have something to say. So Brenna and Christopher and I have all spent lots of hours with students, with individual students, asking them to tell us more about their lives during their essay brainstorming questions. And we believe, and we've seen it happen, the best college essays write themselves. Because when the student lands on something that they really care about and you see their eyes light up and they just start talking about it for the next 5 minutes, and then one of us just gets to just go, yes, right there, what you just said, that's your essay topic. So I encourage you, as you enter into and you're doing your applications and you look at these prompts, to ask yourself, what is my honest answer? Now, you need to be sensible about how you take that advice. I would not suggest that you begin any college essay, there's nothing I hate more than doing homework. That's probably not the kind of message that you want to send to a college. Keep that sentiment to yourself if you feel that way. You're still applying to college and you're trying to help the reader get a sense of some part of your life that matters to you, that you're proud of, or that you think is important for them to understand if they're going to make a fair and accurate evaluation of you. So that's where you get to talk about yourself in your own words, but many colleges will invite other people to tell the college about you. And so Brenna is going to tell you a little more about letters of recommendation.
Yeah, when Kevin's talking about sort of the purpose of how we were trying to get to know students through their essays, through these voices, I'll be totally real with you. The thing that I thought when I opened up any file during my years in admissions was, what's your deal? Like, who are you? I want to get to know you, right? Admissions officers work in this field because we know high school students. We like high school students, and we just want to figure out, are you going to be happy and successful on our college campus? So hearing from teachers or other adults who know you in an academic context is an important part of that process for some institutions. Now, letters of rec are not required at all colleges and universities, but often the smaller the college or highly selective colleges will require often 1 or 2 letters from an academic teacher from your high school, and then sometimes one from a school counselor. So these are adults who know you in an academic context and can talk about not just how you do academically, because remember, your transcript is going to tell us that, but really they're going to tell us about what type of person you are in an academic space. So here is my big advice for you. 2 things to remember about letters of recommendation if you're applying to schools that require them. 1, choose teachers who know you well. If you got an A+ in Mr. Smith's class because he is the hardest science teacher in the school, and you're walking down a year later the hallway and you see Mr. Smith and you wave at him and he gives you an awkward nod back because he cannot remember your name, do not ask Mr. Smith to write your letter. I don't care if he has a PhD. I don't care if you got an A+ in his class. Ask a teacher who you're excited to go in and chat with after school, right? The teacher where you sit in the front and raise your hand, right? They know you well, they know your story, and they can talk about what type of student you're going to be in college. And then the second piece of advice is ask someone who likes you. This is sort of a no-duh piece of advice, but again, people get in their heads about who's the best person, this one has the fancy degree, whatever. I want to hear from the person who can write authentically about what type of human being you're going to be. So ask folks early. That's my last piece of advice here, is that teachers are so busy. They're amazing. They're heroes, truly. So please respect their time. If you are a senior on this webinar, now is a great time to start asking your teachers if they'll write letters of rec for you. And teachers from junior year tend to be best just because they've had a full year of you most recently. But again, it's okay. Schools have different policies around this, but try to shoot for a junior year teacher if you can. The last part of getting some idea of like what your deal is as a person can sometimes be an interview. Now, there are plenty of schools that don't offer interviews. This is not part of the process. There are some schools that have options for you to submit maybe a video that you record or a live video, so it's not an interview with another human being. And then some colleges will have sort of a traditional interview where maybe you go to a coffee shop or get on Zoom with an alum of the college or university or an admissions officer, or maybe sometimes it's a current student. And these interviews, again, are not to be here to stress you out and give you some sort of test. At MIT, we would always joke and say, look, you are not showing up to your interview with an MIT alum and they're going to bust out a calculus problem and make you do it in front of them. It's about getting to know you as a person. Interviewers, good interviewers, are trained to try to get at the why, not the what. So why do you do the things you do? What is the thing that really makes your eyes light up, and how are you going to do that in college? And they usually talk about things like, this student would be a great roommate. I would love to be lab partners with that student, right? It's a conversation, and it's also your opportunity to ask questions about the college or university that you're interviewing for. So this is a two-way street. Do not panic about interviews. These are mostly casual. It's just another opportunity for them to get to know your personality and round out all that other data that they're seeing in your application. It really puts a face to your app. So not all schools will have these, but do look early, because sometimes you can sign up for them the summer before your senior year. So for you seniors, just check it out, see if the schools that you're applying to offer interviews, and then see if you can get one if possible. So those are the high level tips about the different parts of the application. Now we want to take a step back and just give you some lasting tips.
And since after this slide, we've got Christopher, who's going to wow you with the latest in admissions and what we've learned in even just the last 6 months, I'm going to do this rapid fire here. So everyone gear up, make sure you're strapped in, right, and ready for these, right? Our most important college preparation tips. And if you do these 4 things, you will be way ahead of the game, or take advantage of whichever ones are available to you. First, make use of any resources available at your school. If you have a school counselor who helps kids apply to college, you need to meet with your school counselor. If you have a college and career center, if your school puts on application workshops, if they bring in trusted outside speakers, it's right there on the campus. You've got to make use of that help that's there available to you. Utilize college admissions resources. Well, there are a lot of other places outside of your school where you might be able to get advice. I'll give 2 specific recommendations, and 2 of the schools on Brenna's resume do one of the best jobs of this. Some college admissions offices actually write their own blogs giving students advice. 2 of the best out there are Tufts and MIT. Even if you don't want to go to Tufts or MIT, they're not just giving advice for those schools, but you need to make sure the advice you're getting is from people who know what they're talking about. Admissions officers know what they're talking about. People that you don't know their name or their job or their background who share free advice on Reddit, they don't necessarily know what they're talking about. So you've got to take advice from people you trust. Colleges will often come together, hundreds of them at one time, in college fairs. If you want to attend a college fair, you need to see if one is going to be offered near you. I tested this today. Just go to Google and Google college fairs. You'll find a list right there in the first top 2 choices. And then finally, attend college representative presentations. If your high school brings a college rep to the campus, and Brenna spent a lot of time doing this when she was working as an admissions officer, they are there to tell you more about the school and answer your questions. Please avail yourself of that if it happens. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Christopher to wow you with the trends.
Hi, everyone. I've been here the whole time. I was just off camera because my reading face sometimes looks angry and I didn't want to scare you. I may also turn my camera off during this answer just in case my audio gets a little wonky. But the admission trends I want to talk about now are the SCOTUS decision and its implications, both direct and indirect. There have been some questions about whether or not race is still considered a factor in admissions. And the answer is yes and no. No, in that technically the Supreme Court said that race cannot be considered as a factor in the admissions process. So it will not be considered a factor as a standalone detail. But the concession in the Supreme Court syllabus of the decision was that race can be considered as it has affected a student's perspective or experience and their goals, etc. So when students share details about that, it can be considered. Keep in mind that schools are going to be very cognizant of whether or not students are actually being honest and earnest in these explanations. So we don't recommend students try to gain race in terms of the essays. That is one of the indirect effects of the Supreme Court decision, by the way. There have been a lot of new essay supplements coming up. Schools all around the country have been adding essays to give students the chance to explain how their identity in any way has affected their experience. I clarify identity here because even though the Supreme Court decision was about race, the implications do apply pretty uniformly to all identity because the clause of the 14th Amendment that's being invoked is applicable to race, gender, sex, sexual orientation, religion, etc. And so colleges are expected to process all of that the same way. Also, a few states have added laws similar to Texas's top 10% law. So some states are adjusting things at the legal level to help them maintain their own diversity goals. ChatGPT and artificial intelligence is the next trend that's coming up. Some schools are using AI detection software to determine whether or not students' essays and applications are human generated. Some schools are expected to bring back interviews, which we're phasing out, so that they can try and determine whether or not the student they meet in the interview and the student on the application are the same. And some schools may be bringing more popularity to the graded school essay, a la Princeton and Williams application, to try and see, does your teacher have record of writing like this, essentially? It is also expected that there will be, there are also some trends going on in early decision, with some schools having even greater preference for early application pools. And there'll actually be another white paper about that coming out later this year. I know that was a little rapid fire here at the end, but I'm going to hand things over back to the ACT team now.
Y'all,
We're
got a
gonna
lot
sorry,
of insights tonight.
no.
But I know our team at Collegewise wants to just wrap us up a little bit as we kind of bring our content to a close. So I'll jump back on here in a minute, but I'll bring it back to Kevin.
I'll do this very quickly. I mentioned at the beginning that there are 3 different jobs that we do at Collegewise, and none of those jobs are we able to foist on people. So maybe you're a student or a parent who would like to learn more about working with a Collegewise advisor. Christopher and Brenna are 2 of our 70 college admissions experts. Maybe you are a school counselor or an administrator who would like to learn more about partnering with Collegewise. Or maybe you're a student, a parent, or a school counselor or administrator who would just like access to our free materials. If any of those sound interesting to you, you just have to submit the poll. We've had a practice 2 times already in this webinar. So most of you should know how to do this by now. Hey, we keep it pretty simple here. You can pick which one looks most applicable to you, scroll down and hit submit. Any one of these, or the first 2, working with Collegewise or partnering, will start a conversation with someone. You're not committing to anything other than just potentially having a conversation. And the free resources is just like raising your hand and saying, I want resources, webinars, any free advice that you're offering, please share it with me. And with that, I will turn it back to Amy.
All right, everyone. My mind is blown. The amount of information delivered in this presentation tonight, and y'all had some amazing questions in our Q&A box. While we won't have time for a formal Q&A this evening at the end of our webinar because we just got so much great information, thank you again to Brenna, Christopher, Kevin. Everything here has been so valuable, and I know will help what can be a stressful process. We've captured all these questions on the back end, and you have this QR code here. There's a link to Collegewise's website in your resources box. They are here for y'all as a resource. And like Kevin just said, all you need to do is just ask a question and they are there to help. We so appreciate our friends at Collegewise being here with us. To everyone that joined us, remember, just breathe, talk it out, use the tips that you've gained in this webinar. At the end of the day, you're going to make the best choice for you in this journey, we promise. Just some few last minute items from me before we officially say goodbye. When this webinar ends, you're gonna have a little survey that pops up. We'd really appreciate it if you could take just 5 minutes to let us know how we did, and so we can learn how to best serve you in the future as we continue these events. And also, there were a lot of questions in the Q&A tonight about financial aid, scholarships, how to help paying for college. Well, I will tell you, there is a link in your resources box that says register for our October My Journey event. Because you attended tonight, you get exclusive access to early registration to that event, and it is Invest in Your Future, expert tips on financial aid, scholarships, and paying for college. So go ahead and click that link. It'll open a new tab, so you don't have to worry about missing the survey. Register for that event and get all of those questions answered around that topic. And we will have Collegewise back with us for that event. So I'm super excited for all the additional insights y'all are gonna get when it comes to helping to pay for college. On behalf of ACT and our friends here at Collegewise, thank you so much again tonight for joining us, and we can't wait to see you at our next My Journey event. Bye everyone, thank you so much.